Hi there, everybody, and welcome to what is now our, I'm trying to remember, fifth session of this safety week, and we're going to be talking about air operations. We've had a great day and a half so far, lots of great discussions. For those who haven't met me in any of the previous sessions or before that, my name's John Franklin, and I'm Head of Safety Promotion here at EASA, and I'm kind of the facilitator and host for all of the sessions. I'm joined here in our studio in Cologne by my colleagues Marco Tativara and Vincent Lambot from the Air Ops team. And I'm going to hand over in a few minutes to Vincent, but first of all, just going to do a kind of little bit of housekeeping just to kind of help this session run as quickly as and easily as possible. So obviously we've all been doing Zoom calls and these kinds of things for quite a long time now. So in order to make things run more smoothly, apart from the panelists, everybody else in the session, your cameras are automatically turned off and you're muted, so you can't unmute or anything in that sense. Just it saves all of the trying to figure out, how we mute that rogue microphone. The way the system works then is we would love to get as many questions as we can for the discussion. So we have a tool called Slido, which you should be able to access through the apps and Slido part in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen there, and you can both ask questions in the Slido and you can upvote other people's questions. So one thing maybe to look at is, rather than asking, we have 20 of the same question, is to look at what's already there and perhaps upvote others as well. We won't potentially get to all of the questions. We'll try and answer all the ones we can. The others we'll take away and talk about and maybe see how we can update with more information on them in our future safety promotion work, particularly through our Air Ops community. So that's the questions bit. If you have any technical problems, one thing we do suggest, sometimes people have a sound failure. If you're not using Chrome, we find that seems to solve most of the problems, but that hopefully won't be a problem. I saw there's another comment there. Somebody said their mic doesn't work. So yeah, just to remind you, if you're for the participants, none of you, your mics are off and your cameras are off, just to save any problems. So if you use the Slido for questions, if you have any technical problems, please use the chat and you can message me as the host and I can solve any problems. We'll also monitor the chat in case any questions come in by accident and we see how it goes. We're recording this session and we can post that on the Air Ops community in the next day or two. And then, hopefully we have a great discussion and it's just a really useful, interesting, sharing of experiences and challenges to help us all prepare as part of our Stronger, Safer Together campaign that you can find on the Air Ops community site. So that's a quick introduction. Vincent, over to you.
Thank you, John. Welcome to all the participants. I see now that the counter is still going up and we are reaching and approaching or even going over the 130. So welcome to all of you. Safety is always a very good topic to cover. And as said by John, this is the fifth session of the week. So welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure for me to be the moderator of this session today, related to the safety priorities in air operation. All of us know that it's not always easy to make understand our counterparts, being sometimes operator, being sometimes even authorities, that the priorities and the safety priorities is a constantly moving target. We do not have the same challenge yesterday, and we will not have the same challenge tomorrow. The world changed, the priorities and the safety problem has evolved, and obviously it will change in the future. So during this session, we plan to cover initially 4 topics. Unfortunately, one of our presenters has been calling sick off, so we will remain with 3 very interesting topics. And the first one will be handled by Captain Aidan Murray. Captain Murray has over 30 years of experience in the aviation industry, with the last 27 years with Ryanair, where he's instructor and currently he is a chief pilot on the Boeing 737 fleet. Thanks to your journey to a flight operation briefing, Aidan will guide us to the lesson learned from the COVID pandemic, the impact on the safety priorities, and some of the upcoming challenge. Aidan, thank you to being with us, and I give you the floor.
Thank you, and thanks for the introduction there. Welcome, everybody. The last 2.5 years, I think, have been a challenge for all of us. John, if you want to just tick through there to the timeline. I'd like to start off by just on some of the issues we've been dealing with. So we shut down the organization in Ryanair in March 20 as Europe came to a grinding halt. Next few months, we were fleet on the ground. We were dealing with how to keep our crews current, etc. And then we started back operations in June, and we felt at that stage that was it. We were returning to normal operations right through the summer of June into the 2020 into the autumn. It looks like the industry was recovering, but then unfortunately, towards November, we saw the second wave of COVID in Europe, and once again, all states went into lockdown, and the aviation industry once again came to a grinding halt. That came through until Christmas, and then we opened up again into January 2021. We faced lots of challenges during that period. One was keeping our aircraft current, and also keeping all of our crew members current, because we believed that was the best to do, was to keep everybody engaged and everybody current. So we were ready for when the industry did see signs of recovery, that we had the crews and teams in place to support that. So we did that via lots of different ways, including a lot of virtual training. We were involved in Article 71 exemptions and extensions to our training. A lot of our training became virtual instead of classroom. And then, as well as all that, we changed how we did business with regards to going completely digital in the flight deck, virtually within a period of 12 months from the start of the lockdowns. That took us in through the summer of 2021, where we saw the industry seem to recover. And this is our second time restarting the airlines in the group. And then we saw lots of recovery. And then, of course, we came into December and Omicron, and we saw the whole industry starting to slow down again through the rest of the winter. From February 2022, we definitely did see further recovery, but like the black swans kept on coming. John, if you want to click through there, we just didn't know what was going to happen next. We saw in February war in Europe, something nobody expected, really. We're dealing with global supply chain, and that's for all of just our industry as well, where manufacturing of airplanes and stuff now is slowing down because of global supply chain. And the world going into recession will obviously affect the industry as well, and then the soaring energy costs. So we just don't know where the next black swan is coming from. Thanks, John. Next slide, please. So what have we learned over the last 2 years? Well, we've learned that the management, change management is now it's pivotal in how we do our business here. Everything that happens within the organization is completely underpinned by the management of change processes we use. That together then with the other pillar of the organization is our safety management system, and how we manage the risk. Like the hazards kept changing for us over the last 2.5 years. Every time we turn the page, we seem to find a new hazard, and that, managing that risk and how we did that was crucial to a safe return to our operations. We found that we had to adapt and implement continuously changing regulation, which in itself was a major challenge for us. And then we found that, we had to evolve how we did work. Probably the biggest part of that was where we would have had crews reporting to crew rooms in 90 bases across Europe. We now went completely digital for all of our documentation for flight crew and cabin crew. And we had them reporting directly to the airplane now with electronic solutions for all of that. So all of that together gave us the ability to restart the machine, not once, not twice, but 3 times. We did it safely, and we feel that we had used all of the tools, including management change and the safety management system, to ensure that we returned to a very, very safe operation. And as we continued now through the summer, we've stepped up as well to from 2,500 sectors a day in 2019 to just over 3,000 sectors a day. Next slide, please, John. So what are the safety priorities for us? I guess for the lessons we have learned over the last 2.5 years is what we saw was not coordinated across Europe. The guidance we were getting from different countries, different NAAs across Europe was just completely disjointed at times, contradictory, and it was absolutely impossible for us in 27 different countries to try and manage the message. So I think some of the safety priorities to ensure that we have safe operations there is to make sure that across Europe, and I think EASA has to be the voice there, is to ensure with the European Union that we get one message, just one voice, so that all operators, it levels the playing field for what we would have seen in the USA in a similar global area, where there was one set of instructions, one voice during the whole pandemic. We just didn't see that in Europe. So that's something that we really, really need to focus on to make sure that that works for the next time we see a pandemic and that we're actually prepared for it. We also found that a lot of the regulation didn't have probably the expertise that it could have had, especially with working groups, etc. We saw some legislation regulation being put into practice. One that comes to mind for us is the first aid kit, where we had airplanes in Europe now that were never more than an hour away from any airport, having to carry birthing kits on board, which it just didn't make sense to us why that was implemented. But we felt that there wasn't enough operational experience, so that the regulation that is based on operational experience, and there is actually science behind it to back it up. I think the next thing we probably should focus on is the harmonized implementation of regulation. And what I mean by that is that there is no individual interpretation at national level by national aviation authorities, which again makes it impossible for regulation to work across boundaries. We found that that it's important that the interpretation is done at a high level, probably within the EASA or the EU, and then that the interpretation is implemented by the individual national aviation authorities. Coordinated crisis management was one thing we felt we didn't see, and it's something that I think EASA and Europe now needs to work on to ensure that once again that the crisis is being managed at a higher level with stronger input from the European Commission. And I think the next thing then is that we need to look at, and the D4S is going to be hugely part of this, is how we share the experiences of how we got through the last 2.5 years, and then we're also continue to share the data and push forward with data for safety to ensure that that information and that experience is available to all operators within Europe. Thanks, John. Next slide, thanks. So future challenges for us, we see obviously the management of growth. We're back into a growth stage. We've taken delivery of 73 new airplanes in the last 12 months, integrated them into the operation. But what we feel that as the airline industry recovers in Europe, we're not that the return to normal operations or the future management of growth is not going to be sustainable unless, like air traffic control and then ground operations and airport managers start to realize that they need to get the staff in place now, to start training the staff now, so they're in a position to manage the growth and to support the growth of the industry over the next 2 to 4 years. I think consolidation of the aviation landscape is something that we will see for sure now. We will see that we have seen that some of the airlines now are starting to withdraw from the industry. And I think part of this is the whole new group we've implemented in Ryanair with 5 individual AOCs now. We have started the process 2.5 years ago, together with the Irish Aviation Authority and the TMCAD in Malta, which we called Group Operations Trial. That trial finished at the end of May on arrangement, and it was good, right, to see EASA bringing out guidance to aviation authorities as how this could possibly be implemented now for to ensure that we see more seamless introduction of group operations across Europe, which would give airline groups the ability to do their business safely, but efficiently as well. Digitalization, a practical approach. That some of the regulation at the moment is a bit out of date with regard to the whole idea of digitalization across the industry. I think it's something that needs to be addressed for sure to ensure that it becomes, very, very practical for airline operators to embrace digitalization as we go forward. Safe, sensible, and flight time limitations. There's guidance out there at the moment that we've reviewed regard to FTLs. And there are areas there that airlines that needs to be addressed as well. So I think that's something that once again the airlines need to be more involved in the to ensure that what we do with FTLs is safe and practical as well. I think embracing new tech is something that we need to be careful with from one direction, but something that we need to embrace as well. There's a lot of people believe that putting Wi-Fi on airplanes is a really good thing, but then you have to ask the question here: are we ready for the cyber challenge that brings with it? With airplanes as they become more technological. I see there's a move in the industry to have the airplanes more automated, less pilot input. So I just think once again we need to be careful with that we don't end up losing the pilot skills there that can be crucial at times. As we go forward, we have to decide where we are with airspace now, with drones and how they're treated at airports. We're seeing airports being closed with drones less than the size of a seagull, shutting down airports for hours at a time. So I just think that we need to look at what exactly we want to do with that whole area. We look deeper into the regulation of the drones. Fencing is great, but I think it's probably the easiest thing for any drone operator to hack now is the geofencing on the drones. So and then I think we need to look, and it probably needs to come from national levels across Europe as well, as to how we deal with people who are not staying within the law in their drone operation. Once again, then the future challenges definitely for us, we feel, is the sharing the knowledge, and hugely I think we should all ensure that the D4S project is pushed forward and expanded now over the coming months and years. That's it from our perspective, where we see the lessons we've learned, the objectives for the industry safety-wise, and where we see the challenges. That's it for me, John. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Aidan. Just maybe to start the discussion and to launch the question rounds. Okay, you discussed about the recent start of not group operation but group AOCs and your new venture in Malta. In this, how do you see that moving on? How do you see the managing of these various AOCs, and what eventually could be a suggestion of changes in existing regulations that you could see fit for such a move?
Thanks for that. Good question. Well, what we've learned an awful lot over the last 2 years, which we have fed back into the NEAs on this. I think from our perspective, standardization is the key to this working safely. We have managed that by the fact that we conduct all our training and checking through our ATO with Ryanair, and that ATO then produces the same training to the other AOCs as well. From the checking perspective, we find the fact that the line training that's conducted within the individual AOCs is standardized as well, with all training courses for the trainers and checkers once again happening within the ATO. The next challenge then would be the fact that we need to have a lot of manuals, and that is always where the challenges are. So ideally, the idea that there would be one set of manuals that would be overarching from each individual authority that would allow that to happen would definitely help there. We achieved that with our FCOMs, but not yet with our OMs. But that's probably the next challenges we see. The guidance that has come out to the NAAs gives a couple of different options. I think it's up to the National Aviation Authorities and the competent authorities to digest the guidance from EASA, and then for them to engage with the operators as to what they feel is probably the best way to go forward with this now. Definitely something that we need to we see as beneficial to all airline groups as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Link to the you explained about the training program and the ATOs that are similar. Linked to the past, during the COVID, obviously we faced some impossibilities in training and in moving of flight crews around. That led obviously to the exemptions and these Article 71 exemptions. From the lesson learned in the past, among these exemptions that were granted to you, would you see anything that would be interesting to take into account for, I would say, some kind of a stable exemption or something that could be integrated in the regulation?
Yeah, no, I heard that, and it's a really good question. What we found was during the first phase of lockdown, which would have been from March until June of 2020, we decided that we would look at Article 71s for flight crew training. So we went into the virtual training, etc. And we did the same with the CRMS training with our flight crew and cabin crew. So we decided at the end of the first lockdowns that if we went for a second go at Article 71.2, that we would probably find that we were just kicking the can down the road. So what we decided to do was to actually get all our pilots into simulators. We did that by hiring our own airplanes and flying them and hiring extra sim. So that means all our pilots were kept current, and then we weren't dealing with having to repair the lack of experience that we were seeing and dealing with the skill fade as well. I think probably the ones that we still have that we would think would be beneficial is having the e-learning and virtual classroom segments of some of the CRMS training, and as well with the type rating training. And the reason that is, it means that people can work remote, which everybody has embraced remote working over the last 2.5 years. We talked about WebEx and Microsoft Teams and Zoom earlier. So being able to use that technology, we feel probably is would be very beneficial.
Thank you. I see a question on the slide. Would it be possible to have unique EASA compliance checklist? I will take that on board from my side to respond. In fact, some of you might have heard about the coming EASA toolbox. This is basically a set of documents, starting first with checklists that are used, in fact, on a daily basis for EASA AOC's activities, for AOC oversight activities and approvals. And these checklists will be made available in the coming days for the competent authority towards EU to freely use these on their own initiative, being sure that if they use the checklists are according to the regulation, are up to date, and that will be a further step towards standardization. Obviously, when you make a tick box and you tick a box, you have to also know what is behind that box to make sure that it's standardized. So the second step will be the sharing of the work instructions within EASA, and also we achieve in the EASA AOC domain by using inspectors from different NAAs. They use obviously the EASA process and the EASA checklist. So here again, we go little by little to another level of standardization amongst our member states. So I think that goes in the direction that you were expecting and praying for. We still have, I would say, 4 minutes. I do not see any other question for the time being, but maybe another one from my side. We move obviously to a more environmental friendly aviation, new fuel, new components, new technology. How do you see the continuity of our good level of safety and our good results, efficiency and safety, with this evolution towards the environmental friendliness?
I would see that, well, firstly, I can say that embracing new technology is definitely hugely a part of that. We have, as I said, integrated 73 new 737-8200s into our fleet. So these airplanes are 16% more fuel efficient than the 800. They're 40% more noise efficient than our 800. So I think that's probably a huge step without us really having to change anything, with becoming more sustainable. The huge part of what's going to happen here is where's the next fuel coming from. I mean, SAF at the moment really isn't something that is sustainable as for an airline because of the cost of it. But what I do feel is it's the technology and probably where we're going with the aviation airspace as well. So CISAR has been going on for a while now. I think direct point-to-point flying is probably something that we need to look at. Closed airspace due to military activity. Huge blocks of aviation, the European aviation airspace is not available. So we're having to fly around that, which makes it completely inefficient. So I think rationalizing the airspace, and I know it's a difficult task, especially when we're dealing with the military, but rationalization of the airspace, together racing the technology, and I think we're probably a few years away yet from what we will see to be, whether it's hydrogen peroxide or it's other types of sustainable aviation fuel. But I think the first steps are definitely is developing the airspace and embracing the technology.
Thank you, Aidan. So thank you, Captain. Let's close our first topic of the day for this session. Thanks again for your active participation and the good information you share with us and the good experience. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
For the second topic of this day or this session, it's a pleasure to welcome Ms. Silvia Troncoso Fernandez from EASA in Spain. She is an aeronautical engineer holding a private pilot, so she knows how to fly also, which is always interesting in our world. And she accumulated 20 years of experience in the aviation sector. Majority of that was with the Spanish authority. And she's currently in charge of the Air Operations Department in Spain. Silvia will introduce us to I would say, the other side of the coin, with a specific focus on the competent authorities, the safety priorities, and their new challenges. So, Silvia, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Vincent and EASA for inviting me to this event. My talk will be dealing with authorities' view on safety priorities and how we face the new challenges. Well, in March 2020, as soon as the pandemic set on, people's mobility was significantly reduced. Leisure and trips were not allowed, and the airlines had no choice but cancel flights. Airlines came to a halt with aircraft on platform and no passengers. There was no revenues. The airline had to cut staff payrolls and put forward redundancy measures, as well as laying people off. Airlines stopped performing non-essential activity and also removed all that did not add up. They just survived by making use of what was really needed in order to face new challenges. That's what's made possible thanks to management system resilience. But what do we mean by resilience here? Well, that is to say that management system bends under adversities but does not break down. Indeed, management system keeps on functioning even under a state of degradation. Firstly, the lack of flights led to crew skill degradation. In accordance with EASA date after the first lockdown in the second quarter of 2020 and the waves that followed in 2021, the number of occurrences bound to crew experience and training for every 100,000 flights increased significantly. Airlines cope with that issue by designing specific refresher training and checking with the aim to improving crew competencies. Secondly, when it was about crews recovering self-confidence and be fit for flight, airlines used the newly peer support program to help them get back to fly. But undoubtedly, the most remarkable thing that airlines have done so far has been finding new businesses to keep on performing and allow their crews to fly. Here I am referring to cabin cargo operations, exploration and new wet lease out operation, and fleet upgrades. And what has the role of the authorities been all that time? Well, in fact, getting out of our comfort zone has meant a turning point. Unlike the airlines, authorities have made use of creativity to face new challenges. We have granted exemptions to allow new operation while ensuring safety. Only in Spain, in the last 2 years, more than 200 exemptions were granted, including not only operation, but also aircrew and worthiness requirements. We have reviewed the inspection procedures to start performing remote oversight. Lockdown, only shore operator off-site audits, and later on by supplementing the regular oversight process. Thanks to digitalization, Andre mentioned before, through electronic signature and a specific web portal, we have been able not only to issue all the required approvals, certificates, and licenses, but also establish new communication channels with operators. At the same time, new inspector competencies have been developed. In other words, inspectors have some great capacity to adapt to changes and deal with unforeseen circumstances or unexpected occurrences. They have remained available, approachable, and always demonstrating a proactive attitude. Inspectors have been able to understand, challenge, and decide on the different airline scenarios. This graph shows you that both authorities and operators have still squeezed the use and resilience of management systems to enlarge the yellow area, is the legal and safe operation, and allow specific flights in the green area by issuing exemptions. Well, and that brings to the end of my talk, and to wrap it all up, I would say that both operators and authority always need to work all together in order to cope with any adversity and tackle any new issue which might arise. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, challenging times, both for operators as well as for the competent authority, as you just highlighted. How did you deal with the remote oversight activities? What were the main challenge and eventual changes that you had to introduce into your oversight system?
Yes, well, throughout the lockdown, remote oversight was the only tool available to ensure that the airlines were performing in accordance with regulation and with an appropriate level of safety. The inspector held meetings with the airlines managers through WebEx or Microsoft Teams, and they followed a standard auditing process while using modern technologies for the exchange of information. Nevertheless, not all the airlines were able to easily hold an off-site audit. Some difficulties came up with respect to records which were stored on paper. It was difficult to review them on a screen. On the other hand, let's keep in mind that off-site audit needs, after off-site audit, needs to be carried out to ensure that all the items which were not possible to review during the off-site audits need to be reviewed in the off-site visit. Those items are, amongst other, the facility, the record-keeping requirements, and also specific software and tools used by operators to manage to handle the operational data.
Thank you. Thank you. This is true that I think we all competent authorities have introduced these remote oversight as a processes, and obviously there are very good points to it, because I'm sure that we all continue to have part of our activities now done remotely, to be more efficient when we go on site, to be maybe more environmental friendly by not traveling too much when it's not necessary, and we can address things on a desktop or via Teams or whatever tools we are using. So that was a change in life, that's for sure. And I'm sure that things will even go further in the future with maybe direct access to software and to records of the companies from the competent authority directly from their offices. And what about future challenges? What about the future from what we have learned and that you would like to implement for future authority perspective?
Well, that's a good question. Over the last 2 years, there have not been significant accidents in Europe, and operators have dealt with the situation thanks to management robustness and regulation flexibility provision. Nowadays, according to Eurocontrol forecast, the air traffic recovery figures during the months of July and August 2022 will be around 90% versus 2019, and it will remain that way until the end of this year. So, despite these great figures, don't forget that financial pressure is still made on the airlines, and we need to make sure that the safe return to normal operations is ensured. In so doing, for example, EASA, with the support of state authorities, has published a guidance on the role of management system operators during the COVID-19 recovery phase in order to support operation decision-making process in such context. So So I think that we need to be there to help operators in that context.
Thank you. I have a last question. I do not see any question on the slide or so. My last one would be, what kind of support can we give to airlines in addition to what we have already done or that we have recently done?
Well, in my opinion, the best way to support airlines should be working all together as we are on the same boat. Another important thing to point out is the need to enhance airlines' understanding of the regulation so that they are able to meet requirements easily. And I think that the authorities play an important role to such purpose.
Yes, thank you. It's true that being on the same boat or the same aircraft, we have to look at this in the same direction. And this is true that by understanding better the regulation, obviously, you avoid mistakes, you avoid to make it wrong in the implementation. And for sure, it makes the task easier to do it straight well than to correct afterwards. So thank you, Sylvia. Thank you for your presence here. It was very interesting for this competent authority view. And now I would like to propose to move to the third and the last topic of the day, where we are welcoming Dragos Munteanu from IATA. Dragos, we know each other well. We see each other regularly for different meetings. You are Assistant Director of Safety and Flight Operations for IATA in Europe, based very close to us here in Brussels. And you are an engineer, an aeronautical engineer with more than 20 years of experience. I think if you sum up all the experience we have around the 172 participants today, we are making some centuries of aviation experience, which is quite interesting. So, Dragos, you are very close to safety. All of us know that. Deeply involved in the EASA program, which is worldwide recognized. And as the previous presenter, you will present us with some update on safety priorities and possible ways forward, but taking from another side, from another angle, or at least starting from another angle, an angle that we all would like to never really experience, which are the accidents. So I give you the floor, and thank you again to be part of us today.
Thank you very much, Vincent. So hello, everybody. Welcome also from my side to the EASA Safety Week. I'm very happy to be here and discuss with you some exciting topics about how to, in fact, safely manage and develop our industry. My name is Dragos Munteanu, work for IATA in the European team. I'm based in Brussels, and I deal with our safety activities, which I'm sure, as you know, they are quite multiple and diverse, from audit programs to various safety information systems. In the next minutes, I will try to give you a little bit of a background of where we are, where we see, for instance, in the statistics, but also what we know are the priorities and what really keeps post holders, safety managers wake up in this period. So, John, if I can have the next slide, please. Thank you very much. So, first, looking at some numbers and to put a little bit of perspective of what the airline safety performance has been in the past 3 years. You have here three years, 2019, which is the last pre-pandemic year, and 2022 and 2021, the full years, pandemic years, if you want. And these data that I'm showing here are from our safety report that I'm sure everybody is aware of, a document that can be freely downloaded from the internet. And you see immediately that from 2019 to 2020, 2021, the numbers have dropped. The numbers of total accidents have dropped. Then again, these are total accidents. That means that those include a lot of accidents which didn't have fatalities, a lot of accidents which didn't have a lot of material damage, but unfortunately, some of them were hull losses. And it's interesting to see the perspective between hull losses in the jet environment and the turboprop environment. And then it equal, in fact, those equal almost, and sometimes turboprops hull losses are more than jet hull losses, and this is an area of interest and an area of attention from our side. Since in fact we know the turboprops in terms of numbers, they are much less than the jets flying. And again, if we identify those are turboprops which come from a different, let's say, technological era, quite older aircraft, and which in fact lack a lot of the basic, let's say, warning systems that we are accustomed today, like EGPWS, for instance. Then the number of fatalities on board were, of course, decreasing, since in fact the traffic was decreasing. And if you want, in fact, the number which is the most staggering is really the difference in sectors. How in 2019 we were almost flying 50 million sectors, and then we dropped to 22 million in 2020, and in 2021, when we hoped that everything would become normal, was just another year with a very low number of flying activity. So again, we need to know this, and in fact, through these numbers, we can a little bit understand where we are today at the pace of really getting back to 2019, and in some areas even getting more than the traffic that we had in 2019. Please, next slide, John. Looking at, we know very well, aviation is very safe, and if you look at 1 year, this doesn't give you the whole picture. So always it's much better to have the tendency of 5 years, for instance, looking backwards, and to see how the trends and how the accident performance evolved. And here we have the accident rates per million sectors, and we see 2020 as a spike. It was a non-standard year. The spike that we see in all accident rate is mostly due to the very low number of sectors, and then that has an influence on the rate. The all industry rate increased, spiked in 2022. IATA members performed significantly better for various reasons. I'm not going to insist here. EASA is one of them, but not only. And then we see that now in 2021, the situation starts to improve on all graphs. Basically, the industry continuously performing better and improving still its safety performance. Thank you. Let's go to the next slide. Here we see the fatality risks for the main accident categories for the past 5 years. And here it's always very important to look what are and to identify what are the main killers in our industry. And we all know, I believe, that loss of control is still the main killer in our industry, and we have there the fatalities number 647 in a period of 5 years. It's quite a significant number. Then if we look at the other red bubbles, and of course the size of the bubble is directly related to the number of fatalities, we still have control flight into terrain, and that's an area that we are working with our partners to still improve. And then we have in-flight damage, we have runaway excursions, we have, for instance, hard landings and other types. And with the black bubbles, you have accidents that happen, but luckily they don't bring fatalities, but of course they bring a lot of let's say material damage, and those will be gear ups, landings, gear collapses, ground damage, tail strikes, runaway collisions, and others. Put into perspective, these are items that we need still to focus for the next period. Next slide. So regarding priorities, and those are elements that already my colleagues that presented before have already mentioned them, but the whole industry, in fact, identifies them, and we are seeing them almost every day. So for instance, because of this increase in traffic that we are seeing daily, we have new staff being onboarded, and we know how much that lasts to bring a new colleague online and be able to work. And we have also returning staff which have not worked for the unfortunate crisis that we lived through, and now they are returning, and bringing them to standard takes time. And of course, that generates pressure on the training systems. And this is very important to be managed by the nominated post holders that we know there are in all AOCs in Europe, and not only Europe. For instance, crew training post holder working together with the flight operations post holder to make sure that basically the training quality doesn't suffer. in most accidents, operational pressure and rash decisions sometimes are factors that contribute to, for instance, lead to an incident or to an accident. And really, for the airlines in this period, it is very important that they make aware crews that we shouldn't be, in fact, taking chances and with the goodwill to depart early or to catch up some delays or to in fact bring the passengers to their destination because they've waited so much for these flights. This should not be necessarily a reason or an excuse to go faster. In here, a lot of importance on the flight operation area and on the safety area for safety promotion, making sure that we remind all staff involved that basically following procedures and always using the checklist, even if there is no time, is a safety barrier, and this can in fact save lives. And this is an element that we are in fact working on and reminding constantly the airlines, and basically the airlines are something that are doing today to make sure that this period is safely navigated. As traffic picks up, for sure, fatigue reports will also increase. And in here, we have the fatigue risk management systems. We have systems that are very well designed, and now they should be put to work and make sure that fatigue is managed as, in fact, per the procedures and per the systems that airlines have implemented. And of course, the authorities are overseeing these systems. Regarding the big killers, I've already mentioned them, again stressing that those still are there and those still need to be managed. We may think that only the new, let's say, the new hazards are important, but still the ones which unfortunately create accidents that lead to fatalities are need in fact to continue to be monitored. And for this, we have great tools. We have flight data monitoring, for instance, and if flight data monitoring is functioning in a correct manner, that means you get some safety trends, and then on these trends, crew training, post-holder, flight operations, post-holder, safety manager all work together to use that data, to put that data to the good use. That means, for instance, modifying training programs, training all staff based on these trends, or modifying procedures that obviously do not work or do not produce the expected results. So again, the continuous improvement element is still there. We know it. We of course need to prove that that it's working. Cybersecurity has already been mentioned, and the airlines are more and more concerned regarding cybersecurity events. What we are doing, for instance, in EASA, is that we are in the next revision of the EASA standards manual. We're bringing this magic word cybersecurity in terms of a standard and recommended practices associated to it, to prepare and to bring the airlines to this era, which is still new, which is still uncertain where it is. It is security, is it IT, is it? Well, it's clearly something that the whole organization needs, and for sure for flight safety, it's extremely relevant. And through to auditing and the new standards coming up and the European regulation for cybersecurity, these are all chances to increase, let's say, the awareness and protect ourselves from the reality. GNSS jamming, it's a reality that we have lived for the past years. And as airlines become and aircraft become more and more reliant on global navigation safety system, it is where states can also support us to make sure that this infrastructure, which is clearly vital for aviation, is protected from unauthorized interference of jamming. Another issue that has come up in these 2 years, which is quite relevant and also important for the future, in the 5G and the importance of the spectrum availability, in the spectrum availability for aviation. We know that there are issues with the implementation of 5G in the USA, and basically some of the radio altimeters are subject to interference because of the 5G antennas. It's not an issue necessarily for Europe, as the implementation of 5G in Europe is different technologically, but still it's a good sign to show that, in fact, the aviation, we have always thought that spectrum might be an issue, and a lot of industries would like, let's say, a chunk of the spectrum for other types of activities. Then again, working together with states to protect the spectrum needed for aviation is relevant, because we cannot expect that every 2-3 years we are improving or modifying or changing the radio altimeters or another avionics system, because all of a sudden our aircraft certified cannot operate anymore in their normal environment. Cargo and mail safety and lithium batteries still an issue. Still, lithium batteries on board of an aircraft producing fire is not a safety, is not really a situation that we would like, or we have lots of tools to protect if the fire starts while the aircraft is flying. So basically here again, working together with states to make sure that whatever is shipped by cargo, by air, is according to the regulations. And here the discussion goes a little bit wider to postal services and to a lot of let's say sources of cargo, of packages that might in fact have lithium batteries which are either unprotected, either not shipped correctly, or being in fact items that are defective or have a strong potential to ignite. Still there, it was there before the pandemic, but it's still there. And now, since in fact more and more items are being shipped by air, because of a lot of infrastructure issues and a lot of logistical issues, that's still something that that is on our mind. Next slide, please. So basically, there are still a lot of tools available for the airlines if they want to tackle all these safety issues that seem to always grow in terms of numbers and complexity. So, for instance, for their own SMS, IATA has a lot of resources that we make them available on our website. And I will give an example. We have what we call a global safety risk management framework. It initially started as the COVID-19 risk management framework. We thought it as a toolkit for post holders, for safety managers. If they want to tackle a safety issue, where would they find information on where to start, for instance, a risk assessment? And now from COVID, we evolved it into a general risk management framework. It's freely available on our website. And over there, if somebody needs, let's say, a start, they would have information that they can use for that start of their risk assessment, and a lot of resources being put together for certain topics, like for instance transportation of lithium batteries, like stable approaches, loss of control, and all the big killers. A lot of studies that we embarked on with topics, of course, again linked to the major killers, like for instance the TCAS responses of pilots. Sometimes these responses are delayed. Sometimes the responses are contrary to the maneuver that the equipment indicates. We have worked with Eurocontrol and others on this, and of course, unstable approaches remains an area where a lot of stakeholders have worked on, and again we also did, and the results are available for the airlines or the regulators to use. For certain accident categories, we have developed detailed implementation plans. For instance, CFIT, since for us it was, let's say, a start of how to work in that aggregated manner with regulators, with airlines, with manufacturers. How can we tackle, how can we reduce CFIT types of accidents? And in there, we are working also with the EASA and ICAO to make sure that for the whole region, we have solutions, for instance, to check if EGPWS databases are constantly being upgraded and installed and used, but also that the oversight from the DNAs is looking at these elements. And there is a lot of material, as I mentioned, in the IATA safety report that it's very, very easily to be found. Next slide, please. So the way I've had, and yeah, I put here some slogans that I'm sure everybody relates to, and I didn't intend it to be another safety management system course. For sure, safety leadership is extremely important, and in our I revised IATA safety strategy, safety leadership is one of the key elements that we are focusing on, since we know that safety starts at the top, and it's very important that the messages which are coming from the top, from the highest levels of the airline, are really, in fact, going in that direction and not only be limited to a slogan. and to something that we put in the safety policy that is very nicely hung up in the offices as per expectations of the auditors. What we need, in fact, is to make sure that that safety policy now more than ever is put to good use. How can we deal with this challenging period with so many, in fact, crises and so many difficult items to act on? Well, we have the change management process. We have the SMS is really the moment, and we showed through COVID that SMS have worked, and aviation has proven to be resilient. It's really the moment to put the SMS to work and to make sure that basically the value of that SMS is not something that you put on the table and again you present to the auditors during the audit. Is something that is lived and really helps your organization, in fact, survive and develop. And then walking the talk, again, something that we talk a lot about, and we say, yes, we need to, yeah, but working by example and being basically the nominated post holders and the persons which are part of the management system need, in fact, to show that safety is something that they really believe in, and they commit, in fact, the whole organization for this. And asking for support, it's something that is also we believe is extremely important. The airlines have their authorities, the airlines have their associations, they have, for instance, IATA, they have EASA, and there is a lot that has been done in the past years and working together, for instance, for guidances, for sharing information, sharing best practices. This is something that really works, and at least the statistics seem to show that we have managed to maintain the industry at a very good safety level and even to improve. The need to benchmark and the need to have diverse access to information is there. We see airlines which are joining a lot our global aviation data management program, which is basically a data sharing program, information sharing program. We have today 220 airlines globally which are participating to the incident data exchange, basically looking at the incidents, and 170 looking at flight data exchange. Very similar programs with data for safety, to which, in fact, we work also and collaborate for safety. So I guess, yes, the challenges are here, are recognized by everybody, but I think also the tools are present, and whenever there is a need for support today, at least there are ways to ask these questions and to get an answer. And I think this is how we can constantly improve aviation safety. That was all that I had in terms of presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, that was very interesting. And as I said, accident are things that we obviously would like to avoid, but unfortunately, these are part of our real life. Yes, safety starts from the top. I remember more than 20 years ago, that was the name of the Flight Safety Foundation International Forum where I went through, and still after 20 years, we say the same thing. Try an if safety is expensive, try an accident. Okay, that's another one that was at that time.
And actually, it's worth mentioning, I'm going to jump in here because it's my session on tomorrow afternoon, but we actually have Mark Searle, the Director of Safety from IATA, joining, then also Jim Pegram from EasyJet. We've got somebody from Sky Guide, and also a special surprise guest on a session on leadership and culture, which should be interesting. So it kind of finishes off the session. So I'll give that a little plug, sorry, if that's all right.
No problem, no problem, John. Just advertise your next session with more. So now it's a pity that we have to say the same slogan years after years and decade after decade. Nevertheless, we have always newcomers, new joiners that do not know that, or that did not have the experience. Myself, I was involved in the emergency response of 2 accidents. This is obviously not fun. It's not a nice line to have on your CV, I would say. But okay, that's part of life, as we say. Before starting, because I have 2-3 questions I would like to ask you. I've seen that we had a question regarding to cyber regulation from EASA, and I just wanted to inform that as responded by online. We have an opinion number 03/2021, which is currently with the European Commission for adoption, so it's going through the legal adoption process. It's called Management of Information Security Risks. The link is given on the Slido if you are interested.
We put it in the chat as
And
well
in the
now.
chat. Thank you very much. And obviously, once this is voted and accepted, there will be potentially a transition period, obviously, as for any other regulation. We had another one regarding to for you, Dragos, regarding to are there also numbers or data on case concerning improper locking and loading of cargo or back containers? So is there any, I suppose the question relates to accidents. Is there anything that we can point to that as a cause or a risk?
Our group, which is developing the safety report, the accident classification task force, is looking at all types of accidents, and cargo accidents obviously are looked at, and there is a specific section in the EASA Safety report. But of course, if there is the need for more information, we have a very strong cargo team, and we could provide, let me say, more data and look, let's say, in more details at cargo. For sure, it is an area that for us is extremely relevant. We have a lot of members which are all cargo carriers, and the operation of long-haul cargo with this type of dangerous goods is I would say a clear clear issue, and something that we are giving our utmost focus. And in fact, we have being discussed with the EASA a lot on the subject of the transportation of lithium batteries, and basically certification of cargo containers or covers that you put on top of shipments that may contain lithium batteries, to basically reduce the impact of if a fire starts, that you have a longer time for a potential diversion. So it is a very important subject.
Yes, very, very interesting subject. Remember a true story about a container that was full of Tamagotchi, these little animals, these virtual animals that you had to keep alive and feed every so many hours. And it was a cargo flight around Christmas, full of Tamagotchi, of these little toys in a container, and apparently one started to activate by vibrating, and then the whole container was vibrating. So the aircraft was diverted and landed due to vibration, and that was just because this activated itself. So batteries are not only dangerous for fire, but can also create some diversion due to just the vibration of the items. Another question online regarding your any recommendation from IATA side and your views on the group operations?
Yes, as you know, in IOSA, we allow, for instance, to have what we call affiliated audits. So basically, we recognize that there are a lot of airlines which are part of a group, and for various reasons, they have different AOCs, but a lot of their operational functions are common. For instance, operational control center. In that, we already, let's say, have the provisions to view them as one. So basically, there is, let's say, we do an audit of the main company, and then let's say the daughters or the kids of the main AOC, we are taking into consideration what we already have seen as a common documentation, if the OCC is the same, and that's something I think for the future. And I know that the EASA is also going into that direction. We need to recognize that these group operations are there. Of course, we need to understand how they function, how basically the whole, let's say, management system works. Where is the quality system? Where is the safety system? Basically, to make sure that the responsibilities are clear. And then, of course, the issues that have already been discussed and mentioned, like various interpretations from various authorities based on the same rule. That's something that we also hear from our members. It's not really something new. I'm sure there can be solutions. If the same OMA has an approval from an authority, we don't see why that same text is not acceptable to an authority which is still an EU authority. I think we need to get, let's say, to a better position where when we have and then I think for the maintenance, we also get into that area for common CAMO authorizations, for having common CAMO approval. So yes, that gets, I think we are on the track to recognize in fact reality and make sure that also the rule is being applied by these types of setups.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, and for sure for a long period on the agenda and on various forum and discussions. In your data, you show us obviously that aviation is safe. It's getting safer and safer, and keep finger crossed. How can we be even more safe? How could we improve the safety even further?
Yeah, that's a very diverse topic. For sure, with the improvement of the SMS, making sure basically that the SMSs that we have are not paper SMSs. And unfortunately, in certain situations, they tend to be. And in there, really working together with the regulators is I think a solution. And I was thinking of, for instance, oversight and how the operators, how the NAAs could help further the operators. And I was thinking, well, not necessarily with another audit. So basically, if you want to help them now, let's say not print all the checklists and then go for an audit in the middle of summer. I think the best way to do it now would be, let's have a meeting with the post holders and talk with them and ask them, what are your main challenges today and how we, the NAA, can help you solve these challenges. And maybe from there we get to, that rule is difficult to apply. We always tend to put more AMCs and more guidance materials into the big book. And today the EASA Easy Ops is 2,000 pages, and we know why. But maybe there are items which are more important than others, which have never been, for instance, part or contributing to an accident. Maybe there is time that instead of always putting, to also think what we can take out. And we having for years discussions which are very positive with EASA on performance-based regulations. How can we get to that level in which we don't specify how many things you can have on the aircraft, but really specifying the let's say the safety goal, what we want to achieve with the rule, and then seeing if that's achieved. But of course, it is a long journey in which both the airlines and both the NAs need to get to that maturity level in which we are all confident that these numbers that we are already good can even be better. It sounds that I'm talking about a nice theory and a nice dream. I've been in the airline business. I've been writing manuals and procedures, and I've been doing the audits, and I've been working for the CAA. It's always better to be the auditor than the auditee. Changing shoes sometimes is quite an interesting exercise, because sometimes the regulator or the NA comes with very challenging, this is not good, but then doesn't provide, for instance, a recommendation on how would it be better or good. That may be an area in which we can invest a little bit more. And for instance, we discussed about EASA. EASA is a little bit evolving towards getting into the risk-based arena. Journey also in there to improve, because the same items in the regulation are not having, let's say, always the same safety benefit at the end. The number of crash axes compared to, do you have a functional flight monitoring? Crash axes, we don't know really where is the scenario where they have been used successfully to save lives in an accident scenario, compared to if you have an FDM that works, that can really save lives. But again, I'm talking something that I know that you agree, and we are all getting into that direction. How can we make sure that we are looking at the maturity of an organization and how we define confidence in an organization?
I was going to say, can I do a shameless plug for Safe 360? Actually, it's kind of useful that we're talking about this. So particularly for those that don't know, we have, so this safety week is largely focused on implementation and kind of solving safety problems. But we also have this free conference that we're hosting in person in Brussels. The idea is to get as many safety managers as possible from as many organizations, airlines, airports, maintenance organizations across Europe, to come and talk about the key safety challenges we're facing, and that kind of, as you started, Vincent, there, and Dragos talking about how can we do better, and that's a really great example of coming together to try and do that. And then I'll do another last shameless plug for the AirOps community site that we have, where the idea is that we have discussions and not necessarily discussions, but share information and articles on different safety challenges and this collaboration that we're trying to do. So hopefully that shameless promotion there that you led very nicely into is appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, all what you said is really true, Dragos, moving from the auditee to the auditor or vice versa, which is something some of us have done in the past, and knowing what it is to be the feelings to be on the one side or on the other side of the fence. Yeah, you said initially sitting with the management and say, okay, what are your top three, or what is your top three main concern, which is a very interesting exercise that I often do when I visit operators throughout the world, so being with ICAO, being with RTC authorizations process. And sitting with the various management in various departments bring a totally different conclusions, and I have often the 1 million question bill. I say, okay, to the account manager, you have $1 million or €1 million. Where do you invest? And that's where you see if the accountable manager is aware really of the safety concerns. So, what would be for you 1, 2, or 3 elements that you would look at to determine if an SMS is, as you exactly said, paper versus a real functioning SMS? Okay, there is the dirt on the manual, which is hiding somewhere on the shelf, and just before opening it, to do just to get the stuff away of it. That's one sign. But okay, no, a more concrete one. What would you? Well, and the date of the revision is also a nice, smart way to see if it's a living animal. So, any advice from your side? Just 2 or 3 things to check.
Yes, again, a very interesting subject, and a subject that where we have been looking at in the past years for instance, effectiveness of SMS. So there were a lot of standards in EASA that is implemented today. The auditors will be looking at other elements except documented and implemented, because this is what we audit always, but we want to see if is that appropriate and properly defined for that type of organization. You have a safety analyst for a fleet of 1,000 aircraft, maybe that's not really appropriate. What do you use, let's say, the safety reports for? Show us from one safety report to, let's say, an improvement in a procedure or an improvement in a simulator lesson. Those exercises, going to the whole process from you had a notice of something, you've had a spark in the organization. Show us that you worked on it and you didn't leave it like another noise. Show that at the end, this has triggered into something. And then you can look at the meetings for the safety board, safety action group. Are there minutes first? Are there actions in the minutes? Are they responsible persons for the actions in those reports? Are the actions followed up in 3 months, 6 months? Or is just, again, nicely prepared and done, because some people can do it very well to pretend that this organization is functioning, but at the end, you see nothing. And basically, then you ask the crew training post holder, do you have a flight time monitoring program? What is that? Well, for that would be one question mark to say, well, here the organization doesn't really add up. It's not a circle. They all do their own, and they can all be compliant and documented and implemented. Don't get me wrong, but at the end, the whole thing doesn't work. That's why, for instance, in EASA, we have what we call the interlink standard. So you look at the SMS, you're looking at the disciplines, but then you look at the organization level. And sometimes you see that in certain, there are differences. You cannot say, yes, the organization has the full SMS. And today, there are a lot of findings still on SMS in our audits, because still it's a work in progress, SMS. It's something that we haven't yet really all mastered and said, yeah, we are confident that everything is fine from now on. We will never be, in fact. Why? Because people change, technologies change, these crises that are coming to the industry are changing the operational environment. So this is an exercise that we will be continuing for many years.
Yes, for sure. This is, as I said, a living animal, and then we have to start back again to the, I would say, like the quality circle, the
Yes.
big circle, plan, do, check, act, and then see if it works and if it's efficient, what you can do better. So yeah, this is exactly. I'm pleased to hear the example you said, because these are exactly the things we are looking at when we go and we did a TCO, for example, for a functioning SMS. We are exactly looking at the same way. Is it efficient? Is it something you just not just do it to tick a box in a checklist, or is it something you really used and you really take seriously enough to help you to go in a good direction? So thank you very much. Maybe a last point before we close this session. How do you think we can further at the level of NAS, at the level of EASA, maybe also contribute to improve, to be better? Okay, you explained, for example, okay, it's good to add always on top of the regulation new things. Would be nice to have a look at, okay, is this still an interesting point to cover because we have the technology who I would say will cope with that or whatever, or it is not recognized as being a cause of an accident anymore. So maybe we can be more lax on this or more lenient. What else could we go on with, do you think?
I'm sure having this open channel of communication and really doing a lot in safety promotion, things that are already happening, I think that's clearly an area, in fact, to bring closer, let's say, the organizations to the authority. And this word sometimes is really quite, because it involves that somebody is up there and then the organization is down here. Leveling up, let's say, the field and going more into open communications, attending meetings, change a little bit the oversight perspective in terms of, oh, I have an audit, I'm scared and I need to prepare a lot before. It shouldn't be like this. So basically bringing everybody around the table and try to find common solutions, because as Sylvia has said, we are all in the same boat. We all want that this domain is safe, gets better, more environmental friendly, and has a future in any type of operational context that the future that we don't know brings. So I think that's one way. Having open lines of communication, being always with the door open, and then even if there is a stupid question, sometimes it just, this doesn't mean finding, no, it means let's see how we find a solution together.
Thank you very much. Any other question, John? I think it's
no, we got no more questions in the
dried out what was in the Slido. So thank you, Dragos. It was very interesting. So that everybody enjoyed your presentation as well as the two other presentations. It was a very interesting presentation we had. So I would like to thanks again all of you for your participation. I would like to thanks Captain Murray for his very nice explanation and an overview from the operator side, from Sylvia from the competent authority side, and Dragos from the organization side. Thank you very much. So I think we are all clear now that safety is a moving target. We do not set and wait. We just continue to review what's the surrounding environment and world bring us, and we make this a living set of data and living set of objectives and priorities. Thank you very much to all of you. And I already invite you for the next session that will take place
35 minutes time, 1400 CET, flight crew training.
Exactly. Enjoy that one.
V square.
Thanks a lot. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Best regards.